first gentleman to come up, I'd like to invite David Wittenberg from the Innovation Work Group. Please help me welcome David. You can have the hand mic.
Welcome, everyone. Hello, let's turn it on.
It will be
3,
Yes.
2, 1, blast off. Thank you for coming. How many of you have a small enterprise? Raise your hand if you have a small business. Okay, so we're talking to people. How many of you would want to have a business? Raise your hand if you want to have a business. Good. So our purpose here is to give you some help when you are going to start your business. How are you going to market outside of your home country? And we've entitled it 3 Steps to Success. May we have the presentation, please? 3 Steps to Success. Ah, there it is. Okay, great. Okay, so do I have a slide advancer? Or do I call for slide advance? Hello? Oh, great. Thank you so much. Which one is green? Oh, the top one. Have some color issues. These are the 3 issues we're going to cover today. First thing, I'm sorry you are sitting in the dark. Thank you for the light. Please read the 3. Do you have any questions about any of these topics? Have you got any questions about understanding markets, business culture, and then business model? Please feel free to ask at this time. This is your session. I didn't come just to tell you everything I know. I came to meet your needs and answer your questions. Okay, no issues? Great, we'll go right into it. So, the main message is, if you're going to be successful taking your SME to a different country, knowledge is the key. You must know before you go. What is it that the people value in your home country? I won't ask you which country you come from. What is it that customers are looking for? What is it that shoppers want? What is it that industries want? What is it that manufacturers want? Values differ from culture to culture. Not everybody values the same thing. What your customers in your home country may love and stand in queue to purchase may not interest at all people in another market. So the first thing you must understand before you try to market in another country is the value system. This is the most important slide I am going to show you today. Kindly allow me to come out among you and ask you, who can explain this equation to me? Anybody want to try? I know you are a little bit shy. It's not a problem. I'm not going to embarrass you. Oh, this gentleman thinks he knows. Okay, let's see if he can explain this equation, please.
V stand for value, benefits, and
benefits divided by? Best guess. Okay. Give this man a hand. He was very brave. Here's your reward, sir. And who is it that said price? Who said? Okay, here's your reward, ma'am. Whoop. See, now you know I don't play for the national team. I can't throw. I think one of you ladies also said price? No? Yes, please, take a reward. Thank you so much. Yes, okay. So this, believe it or not, is the key equation of your life. What? Yes, it is the key equation of your life, because man is at heart an economic creature. Every decision which is made, whether it is to purchase or how to spend your time, is actually made by evaluating the difference between the benefit and the price. When the benefit is greater than the price, we take the decision. When the benefit is less than the price, we say no. What do I have to give? That's price. What am I going to get? Now, I have a question for you. That's how you compute value. But do you recognize that machine? Who can tell me what that machine is? It's a drill, yeah. In India, we have a word for it. It's called a drilling machine. Indians have a unique form of English that we speak there. I grew up in America. We just call it a 1/4-inch drill. And do you know how it works? Basically, now they don't have a power cable anymore. They have a battery. And you go up, and it's got the power, and you put in a drill bit, and you hold it up to the wood or whatever it is, and you go, and isn't that wonderful? That's how it works. Okay. Well, anyway, what is the value of a quarter-inch drill? Anyone? What is the value of a quarter-inch drill? All right, let me ask the question in a different way. If I tell you that in 2013, 3 million units were sold in America. 3 million were sold in America in 2013. In 2014, 3 million were sold. This year, the year is almost finished, and the sales are right on track for 3 million units. So the question to you, and I would like an answer, raise your hand if you think you can answer. How many will be needed in 2016 in America? I asked you to raise your hand. Okay, Monsieur le Ministre, 3 millions? Okay, I'm sorry, sir. It's not the correct answer. But he gave a wrong answer, so what do? We reward him. We reward him. The reason we reward him is because when we are learning, we must make mistakes before we can be successful. Failure is a necessary step on the way to success. So he will always remember this. The right answers on all your tests you'll never remember. But the time you were wrong, you will always remember. So this Minister Sir is going to learn. Okay? He said 3 million. I will put him in charge of product sales planning. I will, because that's the correct answer for how many will be sold in 2016. But if you were paying attention, that's not what I said. I said how many will be needed in 2016. And the answer to that is 0. Huh? Why are these stupid Americans buying 3 million drills if they don't need them? Well, let me explain. Marketing guru Ted Levitt once said, nobody needs a quarter-inch drill. He needs a quarter-inch hole. Now, why do I need a quarter-inch hole? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm an American, so in the metric system, that's about 6 millimeters. Why does anybody need a 6 millimeter hole? All right, here's why. Because after I drill that hole in my wall, I'm going to put in a molly bolt, and then I'm going to insert a screw, and over the screw, I'm going to hang a wire, and attached to the wire will be a picture. Now, why do I want to hang a picture on the wall? Because my sweet wife likes it. And why do I care about whether my wife likes it? Because I want my wife to be happy. And why do I want my wife to be happy? I'll let you figure that out. So for me, the value of the quarter-inch drill is not the fact that it's made out of steel, or that it turns at 8,000 revolutions per second, per minute, or that it's power pack. All these are, the power pack will last 3 hours. Those are called features. Those are things that the product is and it does. The reason that I value this drill is what it does for me personally. It makes my wife happy, and that keeps me happy. So when you are selling your product in another country, in another culture, you have to know what makes those people happy. Now, all of us all over the world are human beings, or last I checked, I thought we all were. And we have some fairly common things that we value. People like to save money. True or false? I didn't hear your answer. True or false? Yeah, okay. Are you with me, or you just want to sit back and watch? No, this is a participatory session. Okay, what else do they like? They like to save time. They like to be entertained. Anybody here have television in your home? You pay every month for television because people will pay to be entertained. They value entertainment. This means they like to be close to the people that they know and love. They like to be close to friends and family. This one, they like to think well of themselves, and they like other people to think well of them. I was in a session with some students in India the other day, and one lady said, I would like to have a Mercedes. I said, that's interesting. You can buy a small Suzuki for $8,000 US in India, and it will get you where you want to go. Or in India, with tariffs, with import duties, you can spend $150,000 for a Mercedes, and both of them will get you exactly where you want to go. So why would you spend $150,000 for the Mercedes if you can spend $8,000 for the Suzuki? Because I've got one and you don't. That's why people spend the extra money. Well, there are other reasons as well. The Mercedes will last longer. It's more reliable. But $100,000 more reliable? Okay, I get it. You're rich. You want to show off. Enjoy. Have fun. Okay, but people will pay to feel good about themselves and to have other people feel good about them. And if they're in business, people will pay if you help them to produce more. Or even in, students. Well, you students don't care about being productive, do you? All right. So this is what people will pay for. And if you want to see if you're if you're helping that balance, what do I have to give? What am I going to get? Give, get. You have to ask yourself a question. Please stand up. That means you, and it means now. Please stand up. This is a participatory session. Sir, please stand up. Okay. Yes, you too, Monsieur le Ministre. Okay. This is the question you have to ask yourself to know if you're actually delivering value, a benefit. How will it make someone's life better? Now, let's all try saying it out loud together. And out loud means your mouth moves and sound comes out. You know how to do that? I know the other speakers didn't ask you to do this, but I'm asking you to do this. Can we get 100%? 1, 2, 3, with me. How will it make someone's life better? Did we really get it? Let's try it again. It sounded good. 1, 2, 3. How will it make someone's life better? Thank you. You may sit down. Okay, so that is the question you need to ask yourself to determine if you are delivering a benefit. And that benefit has to be relevant in the country where you want to sell your product or service. All right. So how are you going to learn about the market in that other country where you plan to sell? Well, we have this wonderful tool that has come into being in my lifetime, and I don't think anybody here is younger than the internet, because it came out in about 1992 for the public. So you can use the internet to find out what is being sold in your category, in your type of industry, in that country. And it may be the same as what you sell in yours, or it may be different. For instance, my guide here at the conference is doing her PhD on the subject of halal food. Okay? Now that's very important in the Muslim world. Americans don't care, except for about the 2 million Muslims in America. They care. But most Americans, but sir, it's halal. They say, so what? It's not a value for them. So people are not getting rich selling halal food in America, but they are doing it in Saudi Arabia, in Morocco, in Jordan, in Iraq, in other places like that. So understand what people value by looking at what they are selling. The other thing you can look at is how they advertise. Because, as I just told you, if you're selling halal food in America and your advertising message is, buy our food, it's halal, and the market says, so what? That's not what it's going to take to convince the American people that they're going to get value from your service. So by looking, and there are all sorts of different country ads you can see there, everywhere from France to Korea. I kind of like that Japanese one with the guy with bananas coming out of his head. I don't think that's what an American would purchase. But in Japan, that's considered interesting value. Bananas coming out of your nose and your ears. Okay. I don't quite get it, but in that country, it's considered something you would want to purchase. All right? Fine. So you see that by just looking at the internet and finding out how your product or service is advertised, how it is promoted in that country, you can learn about what you will need to be successful in that market. Let me just stop for a second and ask, again, this is an interactive session, as much as you can make it and I can make it. Does anyone have a question that I can stop now and answer? We have a few minutes, so if you have a question. Sir, you have a question? Is it? No? All right, I'll continue to entertain you then. You can be the audience instead of the participants. It's okay. Great. All right. So the point is also, you've talked about understanding the market. Now it's important to understand the culture. And I shifted, that's an Indianism. I moved from my native country, which is the United States of America. I moved to India and settled in my new country, India, 8 years ago. I am a student of intercultural communication, so I know that cultures are different. That didn't stop me from making every possible mistake in my business conduct in my new overseas market. I cannot tell you how many times I have made mistakes in doing business in India. As much as I was able to learn, and I think I've learned from my mistakes, but I still made every mistake, and somehow, by the grace of God, I'm still there and still doing business and doing quite well. But that's the second challenge you face. First is understanding the market. The second challenge is to understand the business culture. How is business done? Now, if you have not had the benefit that I have had of studying culture, let me just show you some of the dynamics of that. Why don't we take a quiz, all right? Are you able to vote by holding up your hand? Think about your country, and you come from different countries. Which is the most important element for success? Is it you deliver results so everybody wants to buy from you? You form strong relationships so that everyone wants to buy from you? Or you follow the rules so you have no problems? Because in different countries, you will break a rule to achieve a result. Or you will sacrifice a relationship because it's more important to you to keep a rule, and the relationship wants you to break the rule. So it's not the same in every country. It's different. So let me just ask you to say which one is the most important. Like in my country, you might say the relationship is the most important. Even if I have to take less results by doing business with A, because A is my relationship, I won't switch to B, even if I could make more money. So the results are less important than the relationship. Or you might say, in my country, keeping the rules is more important than anything. Okay, I love my relationships, I like the results, but if it ever comes that I have to break a rule, I will never do it, because I can't do that. In my culture, it's not acceptable. So how many of you will raise your hand? You have to vote for one of the three. We'll use Australian voting law. Do you know what that is? It's compulsory. It's mandatory. You have to vote. In fact, I'll fine you if you don't vote. Okay, so you better have your pocketbook ready, because I will collect 100 ringgit if you don't vote. So everybody vote by raising a hand, all right? Or you pay a fine, all right? So which one is the most important in your country? How many will say, in my country, the most important business value we won't give up for any other reason is getting good results? Raise your hand. In your country, results are number one. Okay, just a few. She's not sure. Okay. You're a results culture, okay? Thank you. How many of you will say, in my country, the most important thing we must never violate, we must never break, is the relationship? Yeah, a lot of those. And then the third one, how many of you that say the most important thing is we must always adhere to the rules? If we break the rules, we're in serious trouble. Okay, great. Which one do you think is most important in the USA? Any ideas? Results. Who said results? Wrong answer. Here's a reward. Who said rules? That's why I'm asking you. But it's
You tell me now.
yeah. Which one is okay?
Mine is resort, I told you.
Very good. Very good. In the U.S., the most important one is following the rules. Because if you break the rules, they very seriously enforce the rules. You can go to jail for a long time. And if you break a written contract and the rules, you can get sued in the courts. The Americans sue each other in court more than anybody else. So if you're going to do business in America, you better learn to follow the rules. Learn what they are and follow them. They have a saying, ignorance of the law is no excuse. So if you break it and you didn't, but I didn't know, too bad. Okay? And then after that, results are important and relationships are in the bottom. How is it in India? The opposite. You'll take lesser results, and the rules, we have great laws in India, we just don't believe anybody has to follow them. So you have to understand the cultural values. Here are some of the categories that people think about when they think about culture. Take a moment and look at those. I mean, I don't have time to tell you all the stories because time is less. If you want, you can ask me about it later. But how are you treating people with courtesy? See, this gentleman has felt that I owed him a favor. He told me his country, I have to tell him mine. That's his idea of courtesy. In America, I'm being okay by asking him 2 questions in a row, but he wants reciprocity. He gives me, I give him back. That's his culture. That's my culture. They're different. And when you deal with people in different cultures, you must adjust. So these are some of the points you have to look at. Any questions on this? If not, I'm going to go to the next slide. Great. Okay, so the question is, what should you be willing to adjust? I mean, one lady said to me, my boss gave me an assignment to contact people by email. I thought, it will never get done. But see, she was in India where people don't answer emails, but she said, I was amazed. I sent these emails to people in Singapore, and they all answered. So in Singapore, you can use email. In India, it's not as effective. So you might have to adjust what you do. You know, how polite are you? Are you forthright and straightforward, or are you sort of indirect and extra polite? Are you good at keeping a schedule, or schedules are less important? How about the way you interact with people? How about if you visit them, and let's say you ladies are wearing hijab, okay? Obviously, that's part of who you are and what you believe and what you do. If you go into US, they won't care so much. If you go into France, they may not like it. So it's a bend. How much are you willing to adjust in order to meet with the other thing? You want to pray 5 times a day. No issues if you go to Tehran. No issues if you go to Rabat. But you go to New York City, how are you going to do it? There's no prayer room. There's no, so you'll have to make accommodations or changes. Finally, since time is less, I'll go ahead. That's understanding what does it take in the business culture. And the third one is, how do you want to organize? Since you don't have a business, we won't spend too much time on this. But when you do, you will have choices of how to organize your overseas sales effort. Obviously, it depends on what capabilities you have. It depends on the nature of your product and service, and of course, who you are personally. Some of the options that you can consider: you can take a trade mission. You can go with a delegation from your country's international trade, or some of your industrial associations will organize overseas trips. You can go and, one of my friends has a specialty papers business in India. He loves to take road trips. He drives around the US and visits companies to make personal sales calls. But he studied, he took his MBA in the US. He's perfectly comfortable there. You might not be comfortable navigating around these places. I had fun navigating KL last night. I took the light rail, I took taxis, I went to different places, Bansar Baru, and so I enjoyed, but you might not. So then another easy way is to locate a representative who can take your products and knows the local business culture and has the contacts, and that person can get business for you. And the third one is, you can simply authorize not somebody to take deliveries from you, but to actually manufacture your product overseas, or to replicate your service, or to do what you do with your brand name in another country. And that's the easiest, because then you just sit back and collect a check. They do the work and you get the money. Sound like a good deal? They do the work, you get the money? Nobody likes that. You don't like, I like that. I like somebody else does the work and I get the money. But it's a lot of hard work to set up a licensing type of thing. So those are just 3 options for you to take your business overseas. So again, what have we covered? The things you must know. Know before you go. That's the main theme. Understand who they are, what their culture is, understand how they do business, and then pick the overseas distribution model that's right for you. Thank you very much. I hope to get some questions later in the session.
Great.
Next.
Hello and a very good afternoon. Well, my business today is actually to share with you on the SME development in an economic region called Iskandar, Malaysia, and the internationalization of the SME development in that particular region. So I would say in this part of the afternoon is quite heavy a subject, because I will be flood you with statistics and figures, which I hope you will be able to digest them as we go through. Yeah. Now, in the first instance, let me just take you through the landscape, which is the macroeconomic landscape of the economy of Iskandar, Malaysia, vis-a-vis the state of Johor. Now, for those of you in this room from the international audience, Johor is one of the 14 states in Malaysia, and Iskandar, Malaysia is an economic region that was established in 2006 with the purpose of growth that would transform this particular region into a high-income region. So the region was established in 2006, and the government took effort to do the necessary interventions to ensure that the right promoted sector will see to its development over the years. It is a 20-year journey, and we are now halfway through it. And next year, we will be entering into the third phase of our journey to be more sustaining, but at the same time, continue to grow in a very clear direction, and at the same time ensuring that the benefit of all this growth will be with the people. Now, okay, with that as a background, I would immediately go to the economics of it. Now, Johor, as a state, it is actually the fifth largest state in Malaysia, with an area of about 19,000 kilometers square, and it has actually witnessed a growth of population from 2005 until 2010, and now in 2010 until perhaps by the year 2025, we will witness quite a rapid rate of growth compared to perhaps the rest of the country. Now, that is due to the fact that there is this economic region called Iskandar, Malaysia. Because of the rapid economic growth, it has also seen a lot of people migrating into this particular region in seeking opportunity for their livelihood, as well as opportunities for business and employment. At the same time, because of all this, Iskandar, Malaysia has actually witnessed a growth of population from 10 years ago of about 1.4 million to about 1.8 million today, and it will continue to grow about 3 million by the year 2025 when it reaches maturity. Now, if you look at the GDP per capita, the message that we are trying to put across here is that there is also an increase in the GDP, and according to statistics, the Johor economy over the last 3 years has seen, for example, investment positioning itself as the top state. In 2013, for instance, the investment placed Johor top with 14 billion ringgit worth of investment for that whole year. Last year, we recorded 24 billion worth of investment coming into the state. Now, this year alone, up till about the third quarter of this year, Johor has already recorded 27 billion worth of investment. Now, it has actually, over a period of 3 quarters before even the year ends, has actually surpassed the record that was recorded in the last year. Now again, under the Sekarang Malaysia macroeconomic landscape, population works hand in hand with GDP growth, and as any other economic indicators, we will also see the employment in terms of average increase has also grown, and this gives a healthy sign, in terms of employment rate and GDP, as well as the emergence and also the increase in the number of SMEs that has established itself within this particular region. Hence, Sekarang Malaysia constitute 45.6% of the Johor population, where half of them sits in of the total employment. Now, again, if you look at the number of establishment, we are now comparing the number of establishment, large vis-a-vis SMEs. Again, figures here. In terms of, say, number of establishment, out of the 70,000 of establishment, only 2,300 constitute what we term as large establishment, whereas the remaining of about 68,000 are SMEs. Whereas from the two, the gross output in terms of value, out of the 175 billion, 116 actually came from the large establishment, and 59 came from SME. And persons engaged, for instance, for the total employment of both large and SMEs, 800,000, which constitute 357,000 for large and 444,000 for SMEs. Now, this tells us that SMEs contributes significantly high in the state of Johor, as well as in Sekarang Malaysia, where 97% of all establishments in Johor are SMEs. Yeah? And whilst large establishment contributes more towards gross output and value added, SME provides more employment than large establishment. So these are the findings of the study, of the analysis that we go through on a year-to-year basis. Now, again, out of the 97% establishment that I mentioned in Johor SMEs, most of them are in service sector. So we break down, service, manufacturing, and agriculture. Yeah? Now, out of which 88% of the SMEs, that represents 97% just now, are in the service sector. And which service sector are they in? They are in the various segments, which I will be sharing with you a little later. Now, if you look at the persons now engaged in SMEs in Johor, as mentioned earlier in the earlier table, 441,000, and they are all in the various sector, which are in service, manufacturing, agriculture. Now, what I would like to here also share with you is that out of the SMEs that contributes, although we say that in manufacturing, SMEs contributes majority of the gross output, but it is the service sector that contributes majority of the value added among SMEs. So this is a very important finding in the sense that it augurs well with the idea about the economic growth of Sekarang Malaysia that calls for more involvement in the service sector compared to the manufacturing. So again, as I mentioned, the gross output in manufacturing is huge, but from the service sector actually is where the value adding comes in. All right? Now, coming to the internationalization, Now, what do we mean by internationalization here? As mentioned in the chart here, it is quite significant, to see SMEs particularly in Iskandar, going towards the growth of economics to increase or to gain attention from countries across the world. So in the case for Iskandar Malaysia, when we look at SME, we are not only looking at SME for the purpose of meeting to the needs of the local or meeting to the needs of the nation. We are looking at SMEs in Iskandar Malaysia to be competitive globally. So if you have that in mind, then the strategy that would later be translated into programs and activities for SME must be geared towards looking and encouraging the SMEs within Iskandar Malaysia to be one that is of global player. Yeah? So with the increasing adoption of such incentives, there is now a broad range of examples and best practice to learn from as a base of developing impactful interventions for the development of SMEs in Iskandar Malaysia. So again, my presentation this afternoon is to share with you the study that we did for SMEs in Iskandar Malaysia, drawing upon the experience of Malaysia, but at the same time looking at how we want to direct the growth of SME within Iskandar Malaysia to meet to the international market, for instance. So the next few slides will take you through on how we have actually cascade down these elements and looking at some of the features. To a certain extent, we are looking at some of the policies, in fact, that has been in place all this while to see whether these policies are in need of review or new ones needs to be put in place to make sure that we are able to meet those targets. So the internationalization of Iskandar Malaysia SME landscape would need to be looked into SME development by its common practice and trends, so looking at its challenges, as well as looking at the support practices, as well as looking at the low-hanging fruits programs. Now, strengthening and highlighting the attractiveness of Iskandar Malaysia as an investment location is very important. If you want to transform this region into a high-income region, you must attract investment. When we talk about attracting investment, we are not attracting investment from within, but we must also attract investment from outside. That is simple economics. But how do we go about creating a region that is attractive for investment? Now that is the magic story that we need to come up with. So some of them are just pure marketing, but it has to be supported by the necessary intervention that can be demonstrated that we are serious about wanting to create this region that is attractive for investment. So that is the challenge before us. And right in the middle of it is to also place this region as also an attractive location for SMEs. Yeah? So SMEs would need to be developed not out of the sky, but it needs to cluster around what we term as the catalytic projects. So the reasoning here is that we need to bring wealth into this region. In order to bring wealth into the region, we need to bring catalytic projects. From the catalytic projects, that is where the SMEs will cluster around. Now, this clustering around is very important because this is where we will be able to encourage local SMEs to cluster around these catalytic projects. Now, that argument must always be consistent at all times. Otherwise, we might not be able to work out a program that is clear. Clear not only for those that want to see to the policy, but clear amongst the SMEs themselves. So we do not want SME to be created or to be established just for the sake of creating a business. They must be in support of this Iskandar Malaysia agenda. So the first major issue that has to be addressed in ensuring that the image of Iskandar Malaysia is in line with the needs and wants of prospective SMEs from outside Malaysia, it is the positioning of Iskandar Malaysia as the SME investment destination. So this must go hand in hand, be the centerpiece of the internationalization campaign. So the promotion also must come in place. Yeah. So we have to portray Iskandar Malaysia as a destination that welcomes SME in all sectors, especially those sectors that we promote. Yeah? The 9 sectors that we promote. Now, this is perhaps the journey, yeah. The establishment, for instance, right to your very left, yeah, on the SME landscape vision, and then moving forward to promoting SME industry and the accelerator program, and putting Iskandar Malaysia as being SME friendly location, so on and so forth. And we need to, at the same time, set a certain goal as the SME investment destination, but in terms of its capacity building, in terms of its numbers, and in terms of the revenue that might be generated. There are so many targets that we can set, yeah. And we need to establish a work relationship between those that are in authority with the SMEs by, of course, having several programs that would enable them to get access to us as much as we are able to get access to them. Now, these are the 6 common SME challenges towards internationalization. So it is not just about common SME challenges, but this is SME challenges to internationalization. So we are actually putting Iskandar Malaysia in the picture. 1 is getting finance. Number 2 is the quality and supply of human capital. These terms are very much familiar to you who are dealing or going to be dealing with SMEs. Access to domestic and export markets, adoption of innovation, mechanization and adoption technology, infrastructure and security. Now I will go one by one for each of these challenges. Yeah? Number 1, getting finance. What are the common challenges? 1, lack of avenues for financing, whether it is soft loan, venture capital, and whatnot. And then poor credit history. SMEs are always associated with bad record. They have not done their yearly auditing, and then failure of awareness mechanism. Yeah, they are not aware of what are the current practice that is in place, to the extent that, you know, because of all this, they find difficulty in getting finance. Yeah? So we need to give support. Yeah? Is going beyond the provisions of basic financing to the improvement to uptake through guidance and accountability through matching grant system. So on one hand, we got to help them in getting basic foundation, but at the same time, we have to give them assistance to lighten their burden in perhaps doing the first or the initial years of their operation. So that is what we meant by getting finance. Of course, I'm not able to go through the whole page, otherwise I'll be bogged down with this particular item. But what we meant is that we are aware getting finance is a common challenge towards internationalization, and the type of support that we normally give is to help them of that basic financing instruments, and at the same time giving them support, one of which is giving them grant to lighten their burden, especially in the initial stage of their involvement. Now secondly, the quality supply of human capital. This is also a challenge for them. The lack of capacity to pay competitively. They can employ people, but they are not able to pay them competitively with the level of productivity that they want to see from their respective employees. So this is a chicken and egg situation. You want a good worker, but you are not able to pay for that good worker. You will never get a good worker. And little emphasis on training. SMPs never pay much attention to training because they don't see that as an investment. So what would be the support that we need to go about it? So the development of human capital of basic and tertiary education level takes time. So you need to do the intervention by encouraging training of existing workforce and raising wages. So this is more of creating opportunities for SMEs to send perhaps their employees for further training and for further exposure. But at the same time, looking at them and to give them guidance on how to improve perhaps the way that they work in their business to make sure that they can get the best from their workers and at the same time be able to pay competitively. Now, access to domestic and export market. What are the challenges? Low bargaining power. You can't actually command higher price because of the low volumes. Secondly, export information barrier. You do not know how to access to the international market. And there is a lack of branding and marketing. Yeah? So these are common. Well, you can survive if you are only dealing with domestic market, but if you want to be an international player, these are the things that you need to address. So whether you are involved in the startup, whether you are expanding, you are towards maturity, and SME challenges deals at the different levels of development and requires a different form of intervention at each level. So these are the interventions, yeah? Whether if you are SME at the startup, if you are going through an expansion, so these are the interventions that you need to do as those SME goes through that journey from startup towards maturity. Now, adoption of innovation. This is even worse than the earlier. There is limited access to national research output, and there is low emphasis on research and development. SMBs are only created with the purpose of perhaps doing something that would respond to market needs, respond to consumer needs. Of course, they never see research and development as a very important part of their activity to ensure that they are able to be relevant to the needs of the market as well as the future needs of the consumer. Hence, SMEs would normally lag behind once consumer change because they are not able to find new products, because they don't innovate, because they are not able to do R&D. So we need to give them access to the output from research institution. So in other words, we need to allow for research institution to reach out to the market, to reach out to the SMEs, in order for the SMEs to be able to gain access to this, to the findings of this research that is being carried out by the institution, especially the Institute of Higher Learning, so that they will be able to take that as part of their research and development, as part of their innovation, to make themselves relevant as consumer taste changes. Sometimes it's not necessarily the product, even the packaging also you need to change. Otherwise, you will be left behind. Now, mechanization and adopting technology. Again, there is this typically of an SME, they are not in that mode to actually to adopt mechanization, automation. They are always having this habit of doing things on a manual basis. So especially smaller companies have less capacity to mechanize. But again, this is understandable because to mechanize or to automate, it would require a high amount of investment. So what do we do about it? So we need to have a provision of shared facilities, for instance. So if you expect each and every one of those medium or small enterprise to invest on an equipment that is expensive, this will never happen. But why don't you allow shared facilities? Let's say, for example, you are involved in the cosmetic industry. You want to, come up with various products. I don't think you need to have the equipment to come up with your, I don't know whatever is the chemical. All you need to do is to go to a common facility that is provided by perhaps only one that might be able to serve 50 SMEs. So that is a form of shared facilities that we may need to introduce to allow for a lower cost of investment in mechanization and automation. Now the other one is infrastructure and security. The lack of potential collation infrastructure for SMEs. They have smaller volume and thus needs infrastructure that collates input from multiple SMEs to be sold as one large bulk. So what it means here is that if you produce on a small package, but actually the cost would be a lot higher if you are not able to share that packaging with your I would say rivals. But if just like the mechanization just now, if you have an area where you are able to streamline, through, of course, regulatory process and adoption of online license application and approval system, then you are able to come up with common approaches to reduce that regulatory burden on SMEs. So, on one hand, the SMEs might not be able to do certain things because of they are regulated to do that. They need to separate one process to the other process. But here, there is perhaps a need for us to take a look at some of the guidelines, the policies, and the regulation to allow, for this collation of infrastructure for SMEs. Now, having covered all the 6, so from an entrepreneur development plans for internationalization, looking at the low-hanging fruits. Now, whilst we look at new market access, because we are talking about internationalization here, so while we are looking at new market access, you will also be looking at some of the others. For instance, we must be sensitive enough to be able to facilitate entry, for instance, into the ASEAN market. So in other words, you must already have this vision, how to penetrate the ASEAN markets, taking advantage of AEC, for instance. Not to just look at AEC as a participant or just an audience. You need to be able to ask yourself, how can I position myself to take advantage of the development of AEC here. And then you have to look at multi-market alliances among business association. In fact, it is not really a good story as far as association is concerned here, because when we are referring to chambers and all that, it is not necessary this association and chambers represents the whole segment of the SME. So we need to encourage, this is a two-way process. Either the chambers and the association have got to improve the way they organize among themselves, and at the same time, you must encourage the SMEs to associate themselves. And then G2G collaboration is also important, because some of the countries, they might not want to allow unless they themselves involve. Finally, in the last 1.5 minutes, perhaps people might ask, therefore, what are the business opportunities offered for Iskandar Malaysia? Well, there are opportunities definitely based on the study that we've done. So by direct interaction and indirect interaction, of course, we are looking at some of these parameters, but perhaps what is more important here to look, for instance, based on population growth driven demand, which I mentioned right at the beginning of my talk just now. These are some of the sectors that are good for if you want to enter yourself as SMEs. And the other one is based on the sectors of promoted growth that actually SMEs can participate. So one is population-driven demand, the other one is the promoted sector growth. With that, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Datuk Ismail. We're now going to open the floor for questions for both David and Datuk Ismail. Are there any questions from the floor? And maybe just before that, David, I had a question for you. You know, earlier on you were talking about halal and how it might not make sense in America with a population of 2 million. But in Malaysia, I would see halal as eating clean or, you know, just cold-pressed juices, moving in that direction. Is it worth the effort to go through that education and come up with a positioning of your own?
Well, okay, is this mic on?
No,
Okay.
not yet.
Is this one on?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay, well, there's precedent for that. There's precedent for that, and it's actually in one of the other peoples of the book, the Jews. They, instead of halal, have a system called kosher. And some years back, when I was probably a teenager, so that's decades and decades ago, they had a product called hot dogs. You know what hot dogs are here in Malaysia?
Yes.
The hot dog sausages? Okay. So they couldn't compete. There was a small company called Hebrew National, which was a regional in New York City where there's a high concentration of Jewish residents. And so they decided they wanted to sell this product nationally in a country that didn't care, because only the Jews in U.S. are like 1.5%, I'm sorry, roughly 2% of the population. So how could they market this product, which is just another hot dog and actually costs more, because like you have halal slaughter, they have kosher slaughter. So it actually costs more, it has to be done under special conditions. Well, they came up with a very clever advertising vehicle. They had dressed up an actor in an Uncle Sam representing the US costume, and he just was smiling on the screen with a hot dog in his hand. And the voiceover said, the US government says that we can include beef byproducts in our hot dogs, but we don't. The US government says it's okay and legal to include frozen beef in hot dogs, but we don't. We're Hebrew National. Our hot dogs are kosher. It means fit to eat. We have to answer to a higher authority. And it shows Uncle Sam doing this. So it was a very clever advertising vehicle, but it was quite expensive, and I'm sure it expanded their market somewhat. But it was harder to sell a kosher or a halal hot dog to Americans who didn't care. So I don't know if it's going to pay off, but it's certainly a creative technique you can try.